The evidence of Israel's vilest crime yet is overwhelming, and you've likely missed a crucial detail. In the midst of conflict, the fog of war can obscure the truth. But some events are so horrific, so beyond the pale, they demand our attention. Today, we delve into allegations of war crimes, focusing on accounts that paint a disturbing picture of actions that defy humanitarian principles. There's a detail in the unfolding narrative that most people have probably overlooked, a detail that makes these accounts even more chilling. Stay with us as we break down the evidence and ask the difficult questions. We begin with harrowing testimonies. One account describes being detained in metal cages, subjected to indignities, and even the threat of sexual assault by dogs. The shock, the realization of what was happening, is a visceral experience recounted by survivors. This isn't just about physical suffering, it's about profound psychological trauma and humiliation. The question we must ask is, how can such actions be justified under any circumstances? Further testimonies detail brutal beatings and torture. Soldiers allegedly used pepper spray, and the assault described lasted for minutes, while the overall suppression extended for hours. The physical toll was immense, resulting in severe injuries, psychological breakdown, and deep humiliation. One individual recounts needing 7 stitches without anesthesia for a head wound. This raises a critical question: where is the line between military action and war crime? The accounts continue, painting a picture of systematic violence. We hear of individuals being called out by name, one of them being the speaker. The description of events, including the phrase "it raped him," literally speaking, suggests a level of brutality that is deeply disturbing. This isn't abstract, these are personal testimonies of profound suffering. It forces us to confront the human cost of conflict. Another chilling revelation emerges when a destination is reached. The realization dawns that those encountered were not terrorists, but an old man and 3 boys, possibly teenagers. Their bodies were riddled with bullets, their organs exposed. The witness expresses never having seen anything like it. This starkly contrasts with the initial assumption of confronting an armed enemy. It begs the question, were these victims mistaken for combatants, or was this a deliberate targeting of civilians? Finally, we hear a reflection on the psychological impact of witnessing such atrocities during wartime. The speaker contrasts reading about shocking events in the news with experiencing them firsthand while on reserve duty. The normalization of violence, the desensitization to the killing of innocent people, is perhaps the most insidious consequence. It prompts us to consider the long-term effects of war on the psyche of those involved, and on society as a whole. The first layer is context. Every documentary story begins before the moment people remember. There is a setting, a chain of decisions, and a public reaction that shapes how the event is understood. In the case of Israel's alleged war crimes, the important thing is not only what happened, but why the surrounding details made people pay attention. That is where the story begins to move from a simple summary into something more useful. It asks us to look at timing, location, pressure, and the way one moment can represent a much larger pattern. The second layer is what people often misunderstand. A single image or short clip can feel complete, but it usually leaves out the forces around it. Viewers see the result, not the build-up. They see the most dramatic frame, not the quiet details that made it possible. That gap matters because it changes the meaning of the story. When we examine Israel's alleged war crimes carefully, we are not just asking what is visible. We are asking what is missing from the first impression. Then comes the turning point. This is where the story stops being only about one scene and starts pointing to a bigger question. Why did this particular moment stand out? Why did people share it, debate it, or return to it later? The answer is usually not one simple fact. It is a combination of emotion, uncertainty, and recognition. People respond when a story feels specific, but also familiar enough to connect to something they already care about. Another important detail is the human tendency to look for a clean conclusion. We want a final answer, a clear lesson, and a single explanation that ties every loose end together. But strong documentary stories often resist that. They leave us with evidence, competing interpretations, and a reminder that public understanding is always incomplete. That does not make the story weaker. It makes it more honest. So what value can we take from Israel's alleged war crimes? The value is not just the event itself. It is the pattern around it. It shows how quickly attention forms, how easily context disappears, and how important it is to ask better questions before accepting the easiest version of a story. That is why stories like this continue to matter after the first wave of attention fades. In the end, Israel's alleged war crimes remains worth examining because it sits between fact and interpretation. We can see enough to understand why it matters, but not always enough to close the case completely. And that open space is where documentary storytelling becomes powerful. It does not tell us what to think. It gives us a clearer way to look. These testimonies, sourced from various reports, suggest a pattern of severe human rights violations. The overwhelming evidence demands scrutiny, not dismissal. What is truly striking is how easily the perpetrators of such acts can become desensitized, viewing human lives as nothing more than collateral damage. If you want more breakdowns of critical global issues like this, be sure to subscribe.